Hello and welcome to this Intelligent Briefing. My name is Rebecca Miles and I'm editor of Intelligent SME.tech. In this edition of our Deep Dive series, I speak to Chris Conroy, Chief Data Officer at Future Anthem. He tells us about how Future Anthem started using Databricks' platform and how the platform has helped Future Anthem capture player risk in the gambling industry. When did Future Anthem start using the Databricks platform and why did you choose it?
So we actually started using Databricks right kind of near the beginning of the company. So I think we are probably different from most Databricks users, who have went through a whole load of other legacy and other tools and technologies and then kind of like almost had to make a migration. So for us, we used it like it was part of our first MVP platform actually, which is great. And the reason for that, I mean, it's a technology I've been aware of for quite a long time. It was actually the first time within Future Anthem I'd ever used it. So when we were building a platform, we went through a few kind of decision points. I think the first one for most new tech businesses is kind of like which cloud you're going to go to. So that was almost one of our first decisions. And at that point, we chose Azure. And it was already, the kind of platform we wanted to build there was some obvious elements to it. So we knew we were going to be dealing with massive data. So we kind of knew that Spark would have to be a kind of core component of the platform because, again, I'm not sure how technical this audience is, but in really simple terms, and it's not quite as simple as this, but the way I always think about data, you get to a certain point and then basically you need to move into a Spark world because you get to a certain level of process and then you should be using kind of parallel. So there were some decisions that were almost already made. We knew we were going into Azure. We knew we would have some sort of platform based around a data lake for storage. We knew we'd be using Spark as a core kind of like framework. And ultimately, we knew that we had to deliver an end-to-end platform for data science. And for me, when I think about a platform for data science, and I think this is where probably a lot of kind of companies start to fall down. Data science isn't just about building models. In fact, there's a brilliant diagram going around at the moment, which I think emanated from Microsoft, which kind of shows a whole ecosystem of data science. And data science is like a tiny little dot in the middle for the actual models. So, we were really clear, I guess, in terms of what we needed for a platform, which was something to facilitate a kind of data product business with data science at its core. But for me, data science, is everything from how are we ingesting data, how are we managing data, how are we storing data, how do we serve it to data scientists to prototype models, how do we take those models from prototype into production. And even when we're in production, so typically production is okay, we're creating a lot of scores, but again, what's a model score for a SaaS business until it gets to the client? So again, there's a final step of how to integrate. So given all of that, I became very aware of Databricks in a previous company because we kind of developed a platform within Azure, and at the time we'd done it almost like by code, and towards the end of my time in that company, I became very aware of Databricks because we realized, oh wow, this technology seems to solve a lot of the things that we've had to build. And yeah, when we went through the process in Anthem, I spoke to a few different kind of experts, spoke to a few different Microsoft Gold partners in terms of, here's the reference architecture that we'd like to deliver. And, pretty much everybody came back with, Databricks should be at the core of this. So, really that was the kind of decision-making process that got us to that point.
So it was quite an easy decision in the end, by the sounds of it.
It really was, to be honest, because I think given what we knew we had to deliver, then it did become a relatively easy decision. And I think, it didn't make it quite as clear there on the initial bit, but there was one more fundamental for me, which was, given that data science is much more than models, and given that we need, end-to-end processes, I'm really passionate about, delivering data science more as a single end-to-end entity, rather than a whole set of different packages. And again, one of the things that Databricks delivers almost inherently is that it forces you as an organization to think more end to end. And I think it kind of inherently breaks down a lot of the barriers between different functional teams. And again, I think one of the biggest challenges that most businesses have in this area is, the classic scenario of a data scientist build models in Python and a data engineer wants to productionize models in something that's a bit more production-like, i.e. Spark or PySpark or Scala. So again, I think we wanted to kind of like avoid that from the get-go, which again was another part of it.
And how do Future Anthem use the platform to help clients? We
deliver, we call it, it's basically a software as a service model, but we call it data science as a service. I'm pretty sure we didn't actually coin that term, but until anyone tells us different, I think we're claiming it. Yeah. And it's a kind of, I guess it is an interesting concept because it's basically data as a product. So, we build products in 3 core areas. One big area all around safer play and responsible gambling. Second one around personalization. And a third one around data-driven design. And essentially, our job for a client is, we kind of, tell them about our great products. They happily sign up and say that's great. But our job is to, really make it a product experience for them. So from a product experience, way I think about it is all our clients want to do, the reason they buy technology like Future Anthem, they just want to, give us some data and they want to receive outputs from us that they can automate into their delivery systems. So that might be their CRM system, it will definitely be their website or their CMS or whatever they use to serve to their website. And again, that might be, part of the core website. It may be pop-ups if it's something responsible gambling. So, they just want it to be as simple as possible. And, what we use Databricks for is, from our internal perspective, is to build those product pipelines. So, we don't think about, we don't think about like decoupling, the data science algorithm or the machine learning algorithm to be more correct from product, right? It's all part of the same thing. And yeah, for us, Databricks is like the kind of train track that kind of goes through it all. And so from a client perspective, they don't really know or care that we use Databricks. What they know or care about is that everything runs really efficiently. And when they give us, product requests and feature requests, and they get pushed through, our product backlog, they see those things happening really quickly. So it's almost like they see the inherent benefit rather than seeing, rather than knowing what's under the hood typically.
Okay, great. So what would be like one of the most common requests that you'd get from a client?
Again, it's kind of interesting because I guess the phase that we're in, we're kind of hopeful that that our current products are a good match for the kind of the problem set that exists within their industry. So I think the typical request is less about a specific item; it's more like a type. The typical request is, "It's great that your product does all these things. Is it possible to do this?" And that's the typical one. And then again, from our perspective, how that works is, and how we try and make that really efficient is, that will typically, push through kind of our processes and ultimately end up with a data scientist to say, here's a new feature request for the product. We want to, as quickly as possible, identify, what we might do to solve this, what would be involved, and how much client benefit there is, how much development time we would need to do. And what that often or always nearly means is a data scientist building a prototype model. And that's how most kind of like agile tech businesses would kind of go about that process. I think probably the difference for us, and I think again one of the key kind of like ways that we work with Databricks is that when our data scientist builds a prototype, it's a prototype in name only, really, because actually we build everything at a kind of production grade. So, when our data scientist builds a prototype, they're not using a slice of data on a laptop like a lot of companies might do. We actually don't do anything on laptops, and that's part of our kind of security commitment to clients. So even a prototype for us is something that's like basically production ready. It's coded in production language. It's not built in, we're not using things like pandas and scikit-learn. It's built in a production language. It's built for scale. So at the point where we say, yeah, that prototype looks really good, let's push it into the product. Like, it's not quite press of a button, you know. My technical team would get really annoyed if I said it was as simple as that, but, you know, it's quite there's a really fast kind of process to say this prototype is now, you know, a candidate for the product. And it's a small number of steps to get there because it's already been built production grade. And we don't have that massive kind of like chasm, which happens, you know, in a lot of businesses. Like, this prototype's great, how do we get it to production? You know, so it's like the whole Databricks, or the way that we've implemented Databricks, means that, like, that's already a given. That kind of pipeline already exists, and there's really just a choice of what gets promoted into that pipeline, and of course tested and validated before it gets pushed.
Okay. And how does Databricks enable Future Anthem to capture fraud and risk more efficiently?
Yeah, so I think, you know, certainly risk is a massive area for us, and I guess in terms of what we do and what products we build, it's probably a slightly different definition than it might be elsewhere. But for us, risk is all around player risk. And specifically, you know, so obviously we're working within the gambling industry. Clearly, you know, it's well documented that there are a proportion of people, you know, who gamble and who go on to develop problems with their gambling. The product that we have around safer play is all about identifying those players before the problem happens. And we've built a kind of number of algorithms which we group into the product, again, all using Databricks technology at its core, which identify potential risk in players. So it's really a big area for us, and, you know, that can be deployed as a batch, because, you know, many companies, of course, need to deploy these things in batch, but it can actually be deployed within the player session as well. You know, so genuinely, as the players, you know, go and spin by spin, you know, we can deploy that algorithm to say what's happening in this player session. They are now starting to exhibit potential signs of harm, and that's the key. It's a potential. That's what you want to do. You know, you want to be able to intervene, and what a gambling operator would typically do at that point. In the background, of course, we've got a whole profile of that player. So again, you know, is it the first time that they've been flagged? Is this a momentary thing? Does this happen more than once? And the operator, you know, our clients, would then build a different level of intervention depending on those signals. So, you know, for example, in that situation where we're flagging it real time within a session, you know, initially maybe a pop-up message to say, you know, do you know how much you've spent recently? We have, within those models, explainability is very important. So explainability has been a bit of a hot topic in, you know, machine learning and AI over the last few years. So within that type of system, you know, explainability to say this is why we've identified this player, again, becomes really important. And again, that same message may be triggered like to a customer service team. So again, a kind of like human in the loop system, where it's like, you know, maybe not for every player who gets flagged once, but, you know, as a player starts to get flagged maybe multiple occasions in a session, you know, flagged into a customer service agent, and the opportunity for a human being to, you know, review that player's play, look at a live summary of what the player's been doing in the session. Oh my goodness, they started off playing at £1, and, you know, 30 spins later they're playing at £10. That's a massive increase in behaviour. So, you know, again, to technologies like Databricks are underpinning all of this for us. You know, so it's a kind of core engine upon which we're kind of building these tools.
What is Future Anthem's role in the debate around gambling regulation?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one. I think, you know, what we've talked about so far is the technology and the products that we're building around this area. You know, I think in terms of debate, and it is a really relevant question at the moment, because there is quite a large debate around gambling regulation at the moment. I think it's been something that various parliamentary groups have been kind of discussing over the last few years. There's been quite a lot of public proclamations from different parliamentary groups about gambling regulation, and I think ultimately that's culminated in a review, like a formal review of the UK gambling legislation, which is actually ongoing at the moment. So for us at Anthem, you know, we don't tend to get involved in the debate in a very public way, but I would like to think we're very involved in it kind of more in the background. A few kind of like examples would be within the regulation. We keep a really close eye on the regulation, and actually there was two quite significant pieces of regulation released within Safer Play within the last kind of 18 months. So what we would do with something like that is make sure that the products that we're building very closely kind of speak to the problems that the legislation is asking us to. I think secondly, we spend a lot of time with our clients in this area, but again, more on the background. So, we work really closely with the teams within our clients, especially in the Safer Play area. And broadly, what we try and do is, we've got the models and the products that we build. All of our operator clients, invest a significant amount in this area with their internal teams. And what we really try and do is put those two things together to, get to the safest experience. So again, very much in the background. And I think finally, within something like the review of the UK Gambling Act, for example, we spent a lot of time internally thinking about, what's our view on that? Because we spent a lot of time in this area. We've got a lot of experience in this area. So we formulated quite a detailed response to the call for evidence on the legislation, and we've submitted that as part of the call for evidence into the review. So again, much more of a background than a kind of foreground action is kind of where we tend to be.
How does Databricks break down internal silos across the organisation?
So I guess the way we would think about this is maybe slightly different. It's not so much about breaking down internal silos. I guess what we've tried to do, and nobody's perfect, but what we probably tried to do more was, it's the benefit of being a new, we're not a new business anymore, but the benefit of being a young business. And I think the benefit of being a cloud native business is that when we kind of sat down to design, what do we want a platform to be, how do we want to deliver our products, all of the kind of like technical leadership teams, so myself, our head of data, Ed, various other members, we've worked in big organizations, we've seen all the silos. So I think what we try to do is actually at the beginning say, these are where all the silos have tended to be. Let's try and design let's ultimately design a business that we don't have those silos. And I think, it really, some of the things that make me happiest at the moment, I see are kind of data engineers and data scientists, genuinely working as part of a single team. We don't have this concept of let's throw it over the fence for the engineers to work it out. So I think we've probably, given where we are in the maturity curve, and really fortunate we've been able to say, well, actually, let's build it in the beginning that we don't have these silos now. That's not to say that they won't exist in the future, because all businesses started off this way, potentially. But I think for now, it's something that we spent a lot of time on in the beginning, and I think it's probably also the reason that quite a few of us joined a company like this, because we had worked in organizations with really big silos where it had taken 18 months just to get a project signed off and another 3 years to deliver it. And so I think a lot of us came in with those experiences and ultimately frustrations from elsewhere, and then ended up in a company like this because it's an amazing opportunity to say, how would you like things to be? What does this look like if we built it up from the ground? And that's what we've had the opportunity to do. And again, that's why it was fundamental to us to implement technology that did give us that really seamless transition between our data onboarding, data engineering, data science, back to engineering, back to deployment, back to integration. So I think for now, come back to me in 3 years and make sure that we still don't have any silos. But I think that's what we managed to do for now.
Yeah, it must be empowering to be able to actually get the job done rather than having to wait for all these.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Slightly scary as well because it's all on us now. So we are enabled. We are enabled. So there's no case of, well, we couldn't do that because of this. It's within our gift. But no, it definitely is. And I think I've talked about this a lot over various forums over the last few years. It really is amazing what you can get done in a day, and I've always thought that. But when you work in a kind of cloud native business, you get to tangibly experience it, and it is refreshing, I'll have to say.
Why is prioritization of culture the key enabler for cutting edge data products and solutions?
Yeah, so I mean, this is it's probably one of the most used and potentially overused word in any business, and I think now, given how the whole agile kind of methodology kind of transitioned into most mainstream businesses over the last 10 years, right? You'll hear, I'm sure there's a business that doesn't even have a computer at the moment that's still talking about prioritization. I'm sure it's out there, which is great. But, clearly, it's almost like with great power becomes great responsibility, right? But it's like with great technology becomes great opportunity. And when you think, thinking about the importance of prioritization, for me, I just go back to my first year economics textbook. One of the biggest principles in economics is opportunity cost. There's a brilliant, very old-fashioned, I guess now, paradigm in economics: guns or butter. Do you make some more guns or do you make some more butter? And unless you build some new factories, every time you make some guns means you don't make some butter. And that's still where we are in technology, I think. But the difference is that we've got so much opportunity. So I think, business like ours, we could build 10 new features a day. I mean, not quite. I hope the sales guys aren't listening to that. But, this is an example. But, we could build loads of new features. We can build loads of models. We could take the next year building a deep learning module to figure out what the most prominent predicted hair color is within the next phase of developers. But, probably not going to have a lot of relevance. We've got a good, we've been talking a lot about product in the business at the moment, and a mantra of product market fit. You only build things that people actually want. So yeah, I think within any tech business, prioritization is probably the most important thing you do. And again, I just always go back to that opportunity cost. Every decision to do X, is a decision not to do Y. I think within that, and something that we talk about a lot as well, and taking some of the experience from other companies, the other big opportunity cost you have is people's time. So it's not just about prioritizing which product feature, but when I think about prioritization, it genuinely goes down to, does that data scientist need to be in that meeting? Because an hour in that meeting is an hour not spent coding. And I know that seems a bit extreme, but it's something that we do quite regularly, probably about once a month, is let's just have a look at the diaries of the data scientists and the data engineers, and let's just identify how much time that they are spending in meetings. And that's not to say that meetings are a bad thing per se, but it's really easy kind of culture to fall into, where suddenly half of people's time sitting in meetings, and it's like, well, as a business, if you spend 50% of your time talking about things, it means you only spend 50% of time doing things, and it doesn't quite seem like the right mix. So yeah, for us, prioritization would be, of course, massively important in that, what feature to build, what model to promote, but just as important in how do we prioritize people's time.
How can these products and solutions be fostered to drive delivery and automation?
Yes, I think they're ultimately designed to drive automation. So I've got a really strong view about data science that it needs to drive automation. And in fact, if it doesn't drive automation, I would question why you're doing it. I think there's been a massive drain on data scientists over the last 10 years, where they are absolutely being data scientists. They're building, they're using machine learning, they're building models. But what happens with those models? Often the models end up in PowerPoint. Here's what we found. And, I really do question, what's the point in building machine learning and using that computing power, using, the intellectual power of the person that's doing it, going to all that trouble. And people in my business think I'm a bit strange, but I've tried to kind of excise the word insight, because people talked about insights for a long time. It's like, well, if you're producing insights, then almost by definition, you're not producing automation, because insights suggest to me that somebody's going to read something and a human being is going to take action. So I think, for us, everything that we do is basically designed to drive automation. So again, thinking about that safer play topic that we talked about, identify ideally in real time what players might be having or developing signs of harm. Of course, that needs to be automated beyond there. So is it a pop-up message? Is it going into the CRM system? Is it changing the experience the players having on the website, or all three? Personalization, again, it's all designed for automation. So, we've got a recommendation engine. Recommendation engine generates game recommendations for every player. That pushes to the operator, who, again, pushes that into their CMS to change the lobby that you as an individual see, changes the bonusing that you might see, changes the marketing messages. But again, it is all automation. So I guess the core design of our products is really to be something that's integrated into those other, like the kind of like customer facing tools.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And is there anything else you'd like to talk about with regards to the Databricks platform, which we haven't mentioned?
I think we've covered a lot of it. I think the fundamentals of me, as I said, and I don't, it's a bit like when someone's on the BBC, other platforms are available. I'm sure, I'm sure there are other platforms that do other things, but I think the fundamental for us is that, we do feel like we're in a world where it's like sparks are fundamental given volumes, but it's just this integrated workflow across data science and data engineering, and by extension integration, and I think that's the biggest thing for us. And I think without blowing the kind of proverbial smoke, I think one of the experiences that we find within Databricks, which can be different in other companies, I won't name them, but Databricks have got very big very quickly. But as a kind of young innovative company, we feel like we feel part of the journey, and that's not necessarily the case elsewhere. I think what's happened with a lot of tech businesses, they get to a certain point and suddenly they only really care about their big PLCs because they're doing the big billing and etc. And we genuinely don't find that. We feel like we feel like we're still quite special, and I think Databricks understand that. They may, different companies are different size, but ultimately they want to stay close to the innovators, and I think that's a big benefit. And I think it's kind of exciting to see that the original creators of the open source project are still the kind of leaders of the business. And I think you'll look at the level of announcement that came out of the recent summit and the level of development of the platform, and again, I think that's why it's so exciting. I think you can judge a product by the users. So if you go and ask our engineers what they think about it, and they love it because it's like they can almost hardly keep up with the releases. And that doesn't mean we deploy every single release straight away, because of course we need to manage that within the business. But I think it's exciting to feel part of that kind of. It does. It's going to sound evangelical to call it a movement, right? That's probably a step too far, but genuinely, it still feels like a project, and you kind of do feel involved in it, and you feel like anything that's a challenge today, and I think that's the best part of it. When something's going well, things that feel like a big challenge today, it's like, they'll probably solve it in the next release, or they'll probably solve it in the next 3 months. So I think, but I think they understand that integration between data science and data engineering in a way that I think most other softwares don't. Most other softwares, I think, to my mind, are still trying to solve, parts of the problem. But I think, the benefit that we perceive from having really integrated teams and integrated pipelines is really, really big.
Brilliant.